This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade our First Sliver Tribal EDH deck. Welcome back to another installment of our Up and Up series. Today we are updating and upgrading our First Sliver deck. Down in the description below, if you care to skulk your way down there now, you'll see links to this build's deck tech, the up-to-the-moment deck list over on Tapped Out, in addition to a link to this build's video primer series. We got 5 cards going in and 5 cards coming out, and one of the cards coming out is going to dramatically change this deck for eons to come, and we're going to get to that card right away. So let's start with the card that's coming out. It's going to be the Cloudstone Curio. Now here we had an artifact for 3 generic mana that whenever another non-artifact permanent comes into play under our control, we may return another permanent we control that shares a permanent type with it to its owner's hand. So if you know this build well and you know what MTG Burgeoning was trying to do with this Sliver deck, you know that alongside Allurin, which is an enchantment that allows us to cast, that allows any player to cast creature spells with mana values 3 or less as though they had flash and without paying their mana cost, you'll know that this card was paired with Allurin to get game-ending combos that allowed us to cast our slivers, bring them back to our hand, cast another one, and then reap the benefits of all kinds of enter the battlefield and leave the battlefield triggers. Well, it's getting boring. I'm missing out on what slivers do best, and that is overwhelm the battlefield and swarm our opponents. The Cloudstone Curio is a fantastic card, and it is very powerful in this sliver build, but I'm getting bored with it, and I'm looking for a change. So we're going to take it out for a while and go back to old school classic sliver overwhelming the battlefield play. So with that in mind, the Cloudstone Curio is coming out, and just as a spoiler, the Allurin is staying in. We're not going to lose our minds here. We're just breaking up a boring combo to have a little more of interactive gameplay with a tribe that, let's face it, is one of the most interactive tribes in all of Magic. With Cloudstone Curio coming out, let's add a piece to the 99 of this deck that will help us to, I don't know, overwhelm the battlefield by casting just one spell, and that is Living Death. It's a sorcery for 3 and 2 black mana, and each player will exile all creature cards from their graveyard and then sacrifice all creatures that they control and then put all the cards exiled this way onto the battlefield. If you play Commander, you know the power of this card. I mean, let's face it, this card in a Sliver deck, there's actually a Sliver archetype build called Sliving Death that likes to add this card to it in order to ensure a clean, easy victory once we cast it. I think we're going to have a lot more fun casting Living Death than we are casting Cloudstone Curio. All right, next up, another card that's going to come out. This doesn't really have anything to do with the gameplay. It's more of the redundancy of having this card. There are already 2 slivers in the deck that does this for us, so keeping an enchantment in the deck that only does that seems to be redundant, particularly if it's in our hand or on the battlefield and one of those slivers is alongside it. And that card, of course, is Cryptolith Rite. It is an enchantment for 1 and a green, which is the exact mana value of the Gemhide Sliver and the Mana Weft Sliver. And they give slivers we control the ability to tap to add 1 mana of any color, and Cryptolith Rite gives creatures we control the ability to do the same thing. So we're moving out 1 piece of redundancy in order to have a little bit more variability in what we're trying to do with the build. With Cryptolith Rite coming out, taking its place is going to be another way we can flood the battlefield with slivers, and that's going to be Kindred Summons. Here we have an instant for 5 and 2 green mana. We choose a creature type. We reveal cards from the top of our library and to reveal X cards of the chosen type, where X is the number of creatures we control of that type. We put those cards onto the battlefield, and then we shuffle the rest of the revealed cards into our library. Kindred Summons is in, Cryptolith Rite is out, and similar to what we said about Living Death, with a number of slivers on our side of the battlefield already, casting Kindred Summons seems to be a lot more fun than having another redundant piece of mana-generating tech in our hand or already on our side of the battlefield. All right, so with those two changes in mind, now we're going to swap over a few slivers. We're going to take 3 slivers out, and we're going to add 3 slivers to the mix, some of which do not or would not have generally been put into the deck if we were still trying to make the Alurin and Cloudstone Curio combination work. Remember, with Alurin, the mana values of the creatures had to be 3 or less. So that limits the number of slivers that you want to jam into the 99, because anything that you put in that's more than 3, guess what? You're not putting it into play with Alurin. But now that we're breaking up that combo for the time being, let's add a couple that seem like they're going to be a lot more fun to play. First, let's take one of them out, and that's going to be the Capricious Sliver. Now, this was already in the 99, and you'll notice that the mana value is 3 in a red, so that's going to disqualify it from being used with the Lurin anyways. That's not the reason why it's coming out for me. The reason why this is coming out is I don't like the fact that I could lose cards to the Forced Exile. So I can only play the card this turn whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player after exiling the top card of our library. If I have insufficient mana to cast those spells, but I don't want to be, prohibited in my attack, then I end up losing cards that I would otherwise have on the top of my library, particularly when the first sliver is our commander, or cards that we could draw into our hand or put into play straight from the top of our library. Capricious Sliver, yeah, it's a red sliver, it's going to do red things, and this Impulse Exile, no, I don't want any part of that. We're trying to do a Cascades Sliver overwhelming thing here, and we're not looking to lose cards to exile that we may not be able to cast because of the Capricious Sliver's effect. So that Capricious dude, he is out. Taking that sliver's spot is the Brood Sliver. Now, this sliver is 1 more overall mana from 5 to 4, but it's going to do so many more fun things, and one that we had not considered putting into the build because of that hefty 5 mana value. But whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may put a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token into play. So if we send our entire sliver army into combat, and each one of them deals combat damage to a player, guess what? We just doubled our army. Brood Sliver is going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun to get onto the battlefield, and I'm looking forward to doing so. The next sliver that's coming out to make way for a newbie, that is the Homing Sliver. Now, this might be a little controversial because the Homing Sliver does provide a particular kind of card advantage. It's not necessarily card draw because we are cycling the card away, but we do get to search our library for any sliver and then put it into our hand. Here's the concern, though. We aren't a overly flush graveyard to battlefield or graveyard to hand deck. We do have graveyard synergies. You already saw Living Death go in. That's going to pair with Patriarch's Bidding. But do we really want to send slivers, which, let's face it, more slivers in the graveyard mean less in our hand and less are onto the battlefield? And plus, with the sliver cycling being 3 mana, a lot of our slivers already cost 3 or less mana. Yes, there are going to be a couple of slivers that we want to get onto the battlefield or into our hands as quickly as possible as a way in which to start overwhelming our opponents as soon as possible. But we have other ways to do so in order to get those slivers to the places where they need to be, outside of paying the 3 mana and discarding a sliver from our hand. So outside of true nothing but graveyard to battlefield shenanigans, Homing Sliver may have a pretty good place in a build like that, but we're not going there, and I think here we're going to take the Homing Sliver out and we're going to see how the deck can function, losing 1 piece of its card advantage, and we'll just see how that goes. So with the Homing Sliver coming out, taking its spot is going to be the Bone Scythe Sliver. Bone Scythe Sliver. It was so hard to keep this guy out of the original deck when we were trying to do the Alluring Cloudstone Curio combo. That mana value of 3 and a white disqualified it from going in. Again, we weren't trying to win with combat when we were really focusing on that combo, but now that we're turning our attention to overwhelming our opponents, yeah, Bone Scythe is coming in because sliver creatures we control are going to get double strike, and that's just going to make things so nice. Can you imagine pairing up the Bone Scythe and the Brood Sliver? Each time those slivers deal damage to an opponent, we're going to get another baby. And with the double strike, it's happening 2 times. I can't wait. All right, the last change for today, we got one more sliver coming out, and that's going to be the Clot Sliver. Here, this sliver gave each other sliver the ability to pay 2 generic mana to regenerate this creature. But you know what? 2 generic mana, that's kind of a lot to regenerate a creature. And like I said, we do have some graveyard recursion, so we don't have to always worry about our slivers surviving. And we have other ways to protect our slivers in the deck. From spot removal, we have Diffusion Sliver and Crystalline Sliver. We also have, Heroic Intervention to give them all indestructible. The Sliver Hive Lord is in the deck to give them indestructible. And we still have the Sedge Sliver that can help to regenerate them by paying 1 black mana as opposed to 2 generic. So similar to what we did with Cryptolith Right, we're going to slightly weaken one of the strengths of the deck in order to diversify what the overall 99 is capable of. And with that being said, the last card going into the 99, the card replacing Clot Sliver, that is Siphon Sliver. Here we have 2 and a black, and sliver creatures we control get lifelink. Now, you may not think that that's a big deal, lifelink. I mean, you're starting a game with 40 life, you're in commander. No. If you play slivers, you know that as soon as you reveal your commander, whether it's the first sliver, whether it's the Hive Lord, the Sliver Queen, no matter who your sliver commander is, as soon as you turn that sliver up, you are the target at the table. Whether it's one-on-one, a table of 3, 4, 5, 6, if you're playing Emperor, if you're playing Two-Headed Giant Commander, whatever you're doing, you know if you're playing slivers, you are targeted. So that means that your life total is going to go down pretty rapidly. Siphon Sliver is going to help bring that back up because, again, we're not looking to win by combo anymore. We're looking to win through combat. And to win through combat, we're going to deal damage. So let's gain some life when we do so. All right, there we have it, MTG BC, updating and upgrading our First Sliver Tribal deck. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.